watching you.
Imagine this. You post a video, a comment, a simple opinion online. You close your laptop and go to bed. But while you sleep, your words are twisted, your image is edited, and a faceless, nameless mob online declares you are the new monster. You wake up and your life has been destroyed. Today we are sharing 3 true, terrifying stories of the horror that doesn't hide under your bed. It lives in your pocket, and it never, ever turns off. The true horror of modern harassment is its permanence and its reach. A schoolyard bully goes home at the end of the day, but the digital mob follows you. It comes into your home, into your bedroom, through the screen you can't put down. It's the quiet, suffocating terror of 1,000 anonymous threats in your private messages. It's the powerlessness of watching a lie about you go viral. This is cyberbullying in its most brutal form, a psychological warfare that weaponizes shame and turns your own digital life into a prison with no walls and no escape. But this is not a faceless, unbeatable monster. It is a pattern. It is a tactic. By exploring these real accounts, from an out-of-context video that ruined a reputation to a fake account that stole a life, we will expose the mechanics of this modern-day witch hunt. These stories are a disturbing but necessary look at the darkness that festers behind the screen, and a reminder that the most terrifying threats are the ones we invite into our own homes. Now, before the next notification arrives, make sure you are subscribed to Whispered Fear and have activated the bell. Join a community that refuses to be silenced.
Did you see it? Watch it again.
Our first story is about the terrifying speed of the modern witch hunt. It's not a story about a monster with claws, but about a mob with keyboards and a lie that can circle the globe while the truth is still putting on its shoes. It comes from a young man named Liam, a high school student who learned that your entire life, your reputation, and your future can be destroyed in 6 out-of-context and utterly devastating seconds. At 17, Liam's life was a quiet, carefully managed ecosystem of controlled anxieties. He was a senior at Plano West Senior High in Texas, a sprawling, hyper-competitive school where social status was a currency as valuable as a GPA. Liam was not at the top of the food chain. He was a quiet kid, an observer, a boy who found more comfort in the company of animals than in the loud, chaotic scrum of high school parties. His sanctuary was the local Plano animal shelter, where he volunteered 3 afternoons a week. The quiet, unconditional affection of a rescue dog was a language he understood far better than the complex, coded slang of his peers. His dream was to become a veterinarian, a future he was meticulously building through good grades and a deep, genuine passion. He had a small, tight-knit group of friends, a loving but often absent single mother who worked 2 jobs, and a quiet, gnawing fear of the future. He was a good kid, a kid who just wanted to get through his senior year, get into Texas A&M's vet program, and start his real life. The event that would derail that life was a small, insignificant, and deeply ironic one. It was a Friday afternoon in October, during the school's annual fall festival. The football field was a sea of students, a chaotic mix of club booths, food stalls, and performances. Liam was where he always was, working the adoption booth for the Plano Animal Shelter. They had brought a few kittens, a litter of impossibly cute 8-week-old tabbies, in a large, comfortable enclosure. His job was simple: talk to people and make sure no one was stressing out the animals. The antagonist in his story was not a villain. He was just a popular and profoundly annoying jock named Kevin. Kevin and his friends, a loud, swaggering pack of lacrosse players, descended on the booth. Kevin, a boy who treated the world as his personal stage, reached into the kitten enclosure, grabbed one of the tiny, sleeping animals and held it up like a trophy for his friend's Snapchat stories. "Hey man, be gentle," Liam said, his voice quiet but firm. "He's just a baby." Kevin just laughed, a loud, braying sound. He began to dangle the kitten, which was now squirming and mewing in distress in front of his friend's phone. "Look at this little rat," he said. And in that moment, something inside Liam, the quiet, protective, and deeply empathetic part of him, snapped. He didn't think. He reacted. He reached forward, grabbed Kevin's wrist, and pushed his hand away from the kitten. He said, his voice, a low, angry hiss he didn't recognize as his own. I said, "Be gentle. Put him down. Now." Kevin, shocked to be challenged, dropped the kitten back into the enclosure. He just stared at Liam, a look of pure theatrical disbelief on his face. "Whoa. Dude," he said. "Chill out, it was just a joke." The moment was tense, awkward, and over in less than a minute. Kevin and his friends swaggered off, and Liam, his heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and regret, went back to watching over the kittens. He had done the right thing, but he had broken the unspoken rule of high school. You do not challenge the popular kids. He didn't think much more of it. By the time he got home that night, the incident had already faded, a small, unpleasant blip in an otherwise normal day. He ate dinner, did his homework, and went to bed, his mind on his upcoming calculus exam. Hitai had no idea that while he slept, a quiet digital army was being raised against him. He had no idea that his entire life was about to be burned to the ground. He woke up the next morning to the sound of his phone. It was not his alarm. It was a notification, a single angry red notification from Instagram, then another, and another. A relentless buzzing swarm of them. He picked up his phone, his eyes bleary with sleep. He had over 100 new direct messages. He had been tagged in dozens of posts. His follower count, which had been a modest 300, had somehow, impossibly, jumped to over 1,000. He opened the first message. It was from a girl he barely knew. It contained a single word: monster. The next was from a classmate. "I can't believe you would do that. I'm reporting you to the shelter." The next, animal abuser. "I hope you die." He stared at the messages, his mind a complete and total blank of confusion. What were they talking about? And then he saw it. He had been tagged in a video posted by one of Kevin's friends. The video was 6 seconds long. It was filmed from a low angle, shaky and chaotic. It showed Liam's face, twisted in a mask of what looked like pure, unadulterated rage. It showed him grabbing Kevin's wrist, his hand a white-knuckled claw, and it showed him hissing the words, "Put him down. Now." The video was slowed down just slightly, the audio distorted to make his voice sound deeper, more menacing. The caption was a simple and utterly devastating lie. Plano West's own Liam Miller, attacking a guy for trying to pet a kitten. Share this. Make him famous. The context was gone. The provocation was gone. Kevin's own cruel mishandling of the animal was gone. All that was left was a single, decontextualized, and perfectly curated moment of his own, reactive anger. A 6-second silent movie that had cast him as the villain. He scrolled through the comments, a wave of nausea and a cold, creeping dread washing over him. There were hundreds of them. A digital mob calling for his blood. He should be expelled. Someone needs to teach this psycho a lesson. I know where he lives. 1425 Ross Road, his home address posted for the world to see. This was the beginning of the nightmare, the quiet, insidious, and utterly relentless horror of modern cyberbullying. A horror that does not stop at the school gates. A horror that follows you home, that comes into your bedroom, that lives and breathes and festers in the small glowing screen of your own phone. He spent the rest of the day in a state of numb, terrified disbelief. He tried to fight back. He posted his own version of the events in the comments, but his words were a single desperate drop in an ocean of rage. He was shouted down, called a liar, a manipulator. The video was the truth. His memory was a lie. He went to school on Monday, his stomach a tight, cold knot of dread, and he learned the true, terrifying speed of a digital lie. The story had not just been online, it had crossed the barrier into the real world. The whispers started the moment he walked through the front doors of the school. The stairs. The students who would see him coming and would deliberately, performatively, change their path to avoid him. He was a leper, a pariah. His social life, the fragile ecosystem he had so carefully managed, had been wiped out in a single weekend-long digital apocalypse. His own friends were distant, their faces a mask of confusion and a quiet, damning doubt. His best friend Mark had said, his eyes not quite meeting his, "We know you love animals, man. But the video, it just looks really, really bad." The teachers had heard the rumors. In his English class, his favorite teacher, a woman who had always championed his writing, looked at him with a new, cold, and deeply disappointed expression. The digital lie had become the official, accepted narrative. He was no longer Liam, the quiet, hardworking student. He was Liam, the animal abuser. Liam, the psycho. The school administration, in the form of the vice principal, a tired-looking man named Mr. Henderson, called him into his office. He was not there to listen. He was there to manage, he'd said, his voice a weary sigh. "Liam, we have a zero-tolerance policy for violence at this school. And this video is causing a significant disruption to the learning environment." He had been suspended for 3 days for being the victim of a malicious and provably false digital smear campaign. He had not just been disbelieved, he had been punished for a crime he did not commit. The final devastating blow came from the one place in the world where he had ever felt truly safe, the animal shelter. He was called by the director, a woman he had respected and admired for 3 years. Her voice was cold, professional. She'd said, "Liam, we've received a number of concerned calls, and we've seen the video. I'm afraid we're going to have to ask you to suspend your volunteer activities pending a full investigation." And in that moment, something inside of him broke. The quiet, resilient boy was gone, replaced by a hollow, empty shell. They had not just taken his friends, his reputation, they had taken his one true sanctuary. He was left with a truth more horrifying than any ghost story. In the modern world, the truth does not matter. The context does not matter. All that matters is the narrative, and the narrative is controlled by whoever has the most followers, the most shares, the most likes. He had been tried and convicted in a court of public opinion, a court with no judge, no jury, and no appeals process. He now lives with the quiet, permanent, and digital ghost of a single 6-second lie. The video is still out there, living on forgotten servers, ready to be resurrected with a simple Google search of his name. It will follow him to college, to his future job, a permanent digital scar that will never truly heal. He is left with the quiet, chilling knowledge that the most dangerous weapon in the world is not a gun or a knife. It is a smartphone in the hands of someone who has a story to tell, any story at all, and he is haunted by a final and deeply unsettling question. In a world where anyone can be made a monster in 6 seconds, who exactly is safe?
Is that really you?
Our next story is about a new kind of identity theft. It's not about stolen credit cards or a compromised bank account. It's about the theft of a soul, the quiet, digital hijacking of a person's life, their face, their memories. It comes from a woman named Jessica, a young photographer who learned that the most terrifying doppelganger is not a physical double, but a digital one, and that the modern ghost that haunts us is a fake profile that knows all our secrets and is slowly, methodically, and very publicly turning the world against us. At 24, Jessica's life was a carefully curated grid of light and shadow. She was a freelance photographer in Los Angeles, a city that runs on images, on brands, on the relentless, glittering performance of a perfect life. Her Instagram account was not just a social media page. It was her portfolio, her business card, her entire career. She had spent 3 years meticulously building her brand, a beautiful, sun-drenched feed of portraits and landscapes that captured the quiet, hidden beauty of the sprawling, chaotic city. She had a small but loyal following, a growing list of clients, and a small but perfect studio apartment in Echo Park that she shared with her boyfriend, Mark. Her life was a constant hustle, but it was a life she had built herself, a life she was proud of. Her online identity was not just a reflection of her life, in many ways it was her life. The first sign that her life was about to be stolen from her came in the form of a direct message from a friend. It was a screenshot of an Instagram profile. The message read, "Hey, weird question. Is this a new private account you made?" Jessica looked at the screenshot. The profile picture was her, an old one from a few years ago, but undeniably her. The username was a slight variation of her own. Jessica Evans photo instead of her official Jessica Evans photo. The bio was a single, cryptic, and slightly unsettling phrase, just trying to remember who I used to be. The account was private, and it had 0 posts and was following 0 people, but it had over 100 followers, many of them her own friends and family. She typed back, a cold, annoyed feeling creeping up her spine. "No, that's not me. Just some creepy copycat. Report it, please." She reported the account for impersonation, a simple, automated process. She expected the profile to be gone within a few hours. She thought nothing more of it. It was a minor, annoying, but ultimately harmless piece of digital static. A week later, the account was still there, and it was no longer private. A friend sent her another screenshot. This time, her blood ran cold. The account had started posting. The first post was a photo of her from high school, a deeply embarrassing, awkward photo of her at her senior prom, a photo she hadn't seen in 6 years, a photo she thought only existed in a dusty, forgotten album in her parents' house in Ohio. The caption was a quiet, insidious lie, remembering a time when I was happy, before I made all the mistakes. She stared at the photo, her heart pounding. How could anyone have gotten that photo? The posts continued, one a day. Each one was a new and deeply personal violation. A photo of her crying after her first big breakup in college. A picture of her sleeping taken from an unflattering angle. They were her memories, her private forgotten moments, curated and displayed for the world, each with a caption that twisted the memory into something sad or pathetic or cruel. The fake account, her digital doppelganger, was not just stealing her past. It was rewriting it. It was building a narrative of a broken, lonely, and unstable woman, using the raw materials of her own life as its bricks and mortar. The battle began. She reported the account again and again. She filled out Instagram's labyrinthine takedown forms, uploading photos of her driver's license to prove her own identity. Each time, she would receive the same soulless, automated response. "Thank you for your report. We have reviewed the account and have found that it does not violate our community guidelines." The system, the one that was supposed to protect her, was a black box, an indifferent algorithmic god that had already passed its judgment, and it had decided that the fake Jessica was just as real as the real one. Meanwhile, the shares were moving faster than the takedown forms. The fake account was gaining followers, a mix of confused friends and morbidly curious strangers. The lines between the two Jessicas began to blur. She would get messages from old friends. "Hey, I saw your post about your breakup. Are you okay?" She would get comments on her own, real, professional photos. "How can you post this happy stuff when you're clearly so depressed on your other account?" The digital ghost was not just haunting her, it was consuming her. Her carefully constructed brand, her professional identity, was being eroded day by day by a quiet, persistent, and utterly uncontrollable campaign of psychological warfare. The cyberbullying was a slow, methodical drip of poison. The fake account began to evolve. It started sending direct messages to her clients, her friends, her own mother. The messages were a perfect, terrifying imitation of her own voice, her own turns of phrase. They were filled with subtle, believable lies, with quiet, manipulative requests for money, for sympathy, for help. It was a performance, a brilliant and terrifying impersonation that was slowly, methodically, turning her own support system against her. She was in a constant state of panic, of damage control. She would spend her days apologizing, explaining, trying to convince the people in her life that the woman in the messages, the woman in the sad, embarrassing photos, was not her. But the doubt was a seed that once planted was impossible to root out. She was losing. The takedown forms moved at the speed of bureaucracy, while the shares, the comments, the lies, moved at the speed of light. She was in a war against a ghost, and the ghost was winning. The climax of her quiet, desperate war came on a Monday morning. She had a major photo shoot scheduled with an important new client, a local high-end fashion boutique, the Dreslin, on Sunset Boulevard. It was a huge opportunity, a chance to finally break through to the next level of her career. The night before, the fake account had been particularly active, posting a series of old drunken party photos from her college days, with a long, rambling, and deeply unsettling caption about her struggles with alcohol. She walked into the photo shoot, her hands shaking, her mind a wreck. The client, a chic professional woman in her 40s, was polite, but distant. The energy in the room was wrong. The shoot was a disaster. The model was listless. The client was critical, and Chloe's own creative eye felt blind, useless. At the end of the shoot, the client pulled her aside. "Jessica," she began, her voice a cool, professional sound. "I'm not sure this is going to work out. We value a certain professionalism in the people we work with, and your personal brand. It's just not a good fit for us right now." And there it was. The digital ghost had broken through into the real world. It had not just taken her past. It had taken her future. She was left with a choice that was no choice at all. She could continue her slow, losing battle against the indifferent algorithm of a social media giant, or she could do the only thing that would truly, finally, kill the ghost. That night she sat in her quiet, dark apartment, the glow of her laptop screen illuminating her face. She opened her own, real, and once beloved Instagram account. She looked at her beautiful, curated grid, the product of years of her own hard work, her own vision, her own life. And with a single, heartbreaking, and utterly final click, she deleted it all. The resolution, if you can call it that, came a few weeks later. A friend, a computer security expert, had been helping her with her own private investigation, and he had found the source. He had traced the IP address of the fake account. It wasn't a random troll a world away. It was an ex-boyfriend, a quiet, unassuming man she had dated for a few months, a man who had been a trusted, intimate part of her life, a man who apparently had not taken their breakup well. He had been a quiet, patient, and utterly ruthless architect of her digital demise, using her own shared memories as a weapon against her. She took the evidence to the Los Angeles Police Department. A report was filed, but the legal process was slow, complex, and uncertain. The damage was already done. She is left with a quiet, chilling, and deeply modern kind of fear. She knows that in a world where our online and real-life identities are inextricably linked, the most dangerous ghost is a digital one. She knows that your entire life, your reputation, your career can be stolen, not by a man with a gun, but by a man with a password, with a grudge, with a handful of your own forgotten photos. The fake account is gone, but the screenshots, the comments, the lies, they are out there forever, a permanent digital scar on her soul, and she is haunted by a final and deeply unsettling question. In a world where a fake version of you can be more real, more convincing than you are, how exactly are you supposed to prove that you exist?
You think we're laughing with you?
Our final story is about the two-faced monster of the modern internet. It's about the chilling duality of a mob that wears the mask of a comedian in public and the mask of a predator in private. It comes from a young man named Mark, who learned that the most terrifying form of harassment isn't the insult that everyone can see. It's the whisper that comes after the laughter, the quiet digital threat that follows you home, into your most private spaces, long after the public joke is over. At 24, Mark's real life was a quiet, unassuming thing. He was a part-time barista at a Starbucks on Lavaca Street in downtown Austin, Texas, a job that paid the bills on his small but quiet apartment in the North Loop neighborhood. But his Real life, the place where he felt most alive, most himself, was online. He was a moderately successful Twitch streamer and a respected voice in the online community for a massive, sprawling MMORPG called Ethelgard Online. To his few thousand followers, he wasn't Mark, the quiet barista. He was Valerius, a thoughtful, analytical player known for his deep dives into game lore and his fair-minded critiques of new updates. His small online community was his sanctuary, a place of shared passion, of inside jokes, of a genuine and deeply comforting sense of belonging. The opinion that would shatter that world was a mild one. The game's developer had just released a new, highly anticipated expansion, and, in Mark's opinion, it was a mess. The new game mechanics were clunky, the story was derivative, and it was riddled with bugs. After playing it for a week, he did what he always did. He wrote a long, detailed, and meticulously fair critique on his Twitter page. He praised the art design. He acknowledged the ambition of the developers, but he was honest about its flaws. It was a critique born not of hate, but of a deep, abiding love for the game and a desire to see it be better. He posted the thread, expecting a healthy, if spirited, debate. He did not get a debate. He got a dogpile. The firestorm was ignited by a single spark, a massive, million-follower streamer, a man who went by the name Apex Alpha, quote-tweeted his thread with a single, dismissive, and utterly devastating sentence. Lol, imagine writing a 20-tweet essay crying about a video game. It's not that serious, bro. And that was it. That was all it took. The mob arrived. His mentions exploded. For the first few hours, it was just what the prompt described. Public jokes, a deluge of memes, of gifs, of replies telling him to touch grass, to get a life. That he was a snowflake who was crying about a game. It was annoying, it was dismissive, but it was, on the surface, just the loud, obnoxious noise of the internet. The public performance was one of mockery, of treating his well-reasoned critique as a hysterical overreaction. It was, they all insisted, just a joke. He tried to ignore it. He muted the conversation, turned off his notifications. He went to work his shift at Starbucks, the familiar, comforting routine of grinding beans and steaming milk, a welcome refuge from the digital storm. He came home. That night, exhausted, and made the mistake that would be the beginning of his real nightmare. He opened his DMs. The private messages were not jokes. The public performance of lighthearted mockery was gone, replaced by a torrent of pure, undiluted, and terrifyingly personal venom. We know you're that sad little barista on Lavaca. Maybe we should come visit you at work. See how you like being critiqued. You think you're safe in your little North Loop apartment? It's not that hard to find an address, you pathetic loser. And then, the images started. Photoshopped images of his face on dead bodies. Pictures of his apartment building, taken from the street, with a red circle around his window. And the death threats. Dozens of them, detailed, specific, and utterly without humor. They described in graphic detail the ways they were going to hurt him, the weapons they were going to use. This was the terrifying duality of modern cyberbullying. In public, on the main timeline, it was all memes and laughter and, "It's just a joke, bro." In private, in the dark, unmoderated space of his direct messages, it was a coordinated, relentless, and terrifying campaign of psychological warfare. He began the frantic and ultimately futile process of trying to fight back. He blocked accounts, but for every one he blocked, 3 more would appear, their usernames a slight variation of the last. He reported the death threats to Twitter's support team and was met with a series of soulless, automated replies. "We have reviewed your report and have not found a violation of our safety policies." The mob, it seemed, was a monster that the platform itself was either unable or unwilling to fight. The siege lasted for 2 days. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He just sat in his dark apartment, the curtains drawn, and watched the endless, toxic stream of hatred pour into his phone. His sanctuary, his online community, had become a war zone. And he was the only casualty. He felt a profound and deeply isolating paranoia. Every car that passed on the street outside, Every footstep in the hallway of his apartment building was a potential threat. The digital mob was a faceless, nameless, and now seemingly omnipresent monster. The final, terrifying escalation, the moment the digital threat became a physical one, came on the third night. It was just after midnight. His apartment was silent. He was sitting on his sofa, his phone, for the first time in 48 hours, quiet. The mob, it seemed, had gotten bored and had moved on to its next target. He felt a small, fragile flicker of relief. And then he heard a sound, not from his phone, but from his front door. It was the sound of his doorbell. A long, insistent, and utterly terrifying ring in the dead of night. He froze, his blood turning to ice. They were here. They had found him. He crept to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. He was about to dismiss it as a prank, a final parting shot from the mob, when he saw the pizza box. A single, large pizza box, sitting on the floor in front of his door. He hadn't ordered a pizza. He watched, his eye pressed to the peephole, as another delivery driver arrived and then another. Within 10 minutes, there were over a dozen pizzas from every pizzeria in a 5-mile radius. Pizza Hut, Domino's, Austin's Pizza, stacked in a tower in front of his door, all ordered to his address, all cash on delivery. It was a classic, juvenile, but deeply unsettling harassment tactic. And then he heard the sirens, distant at first, but growing rapidly, terrifyingly closer. He looked through his living room window, which faced the street. He saw them. A half-dozen Austin Police Department squad cars, their red and blue lights, flashing, screaming down his quiet residential street, and screeching to a halt in front of his apartment building. Officers poured out, their guns drawn, taking cover behind their car doors. They were screaming into a megaphone. "This is the APD. To the resident of apartment 2B. We have the building surrounded. Come out with your hands up." He had been swatted. A prank call, a fake hostage report had turned his quiet, safe home into the scene of a high-stakes and potentially deadly police raid. He knew with a certainty that was a new and final kind of terror, that if he didn't do exactly as they said, if he made one wrong move, he would be shot. He did as he was told. He walked out of his apartment, his hands in the air, and was immediately thrown to the ground, his face pressed into the rough industrial carpet of the hallway, a knee in his back, the cold hard steel of a gun barrel against his head. The next few hours were a blur of confusion, of fear, of a profound and deeply humiliating violation. He was interrogated, his apartment was searched. It took the police nearly 3 hours to finally, reluctantly, believe his story. That he was not a criminal, but a victim. That the hostage situation had been a lie, a very dangerous and very real joke. The police left. The pizzas were eventually taken away. The silence returned to his apartment, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was a dead silence, a tomb-like silence. He was left with a truth more horrifying than any ghost. The monster of the internet was not a digital phantom. It had a real, physical, and potentially lethal reach. It could find your address. It could send a dozen strangers to your door, and it could send an armed and terrified police force to your home. With a single, anonymous, and untraceable phone call, he deleted his accounts the next day. Valerius, the thoughtful, analytical gamer, the man who had built a small, beautiful community in the digital world, was dead. He had been executed by a mob that was, at that very moment, probably laughing about it in a private Discord channel. He still works at the Starbucks. He still lives in the same apartment, but he is a ghost in his own life. He is haunted by the knowledge that the world is full of faceless, nameless, and utterly remorseless people who will, for the simple, fleeting pleasure of their own amusement, tear a person's life apart, and he is left with a final and deeply unsettling question. In a world where 1,000 anonymous strangers can agree that their cruelty is just a joke, who, exactly, is left to hear you when you scream? A 6-second lie that becomes the truth. A digital doppelganger that steals a life. and a mob that wears the mask of a comedian in public and a predator in private. These three stories are a chilling portrait of a new kind of monster. A monster with a million faces, a million voices, and a single unified hunger for destruction. The true horror of cyberbullying is not just in the threats or the insults, it is in its permanence and its omnipresence. The schoolyard bully goes home at the end of the day. The abusive boss is left at the office, but the digital mob follows. You. It comes into your home, into your bedroom, through the glowing screen that never sleeps. It weaponizes your own life against you, turning your memories into ammunition and your online sanctuary into a war zone. These accounts force us to confront a terrifying truth about our modern world. The monster is no longer hiding under the bed. It is hiding behind a username. The most terrifying mob is not the one with torches and pitchforks. It's the one with keyboards and a Wi-Fi connection. And they leave us with a final, deeply unsettling question. In a world where a lie can travel around the globe before the truth has a chance to be heard, what defense do we have when the mob decides that it's our turn to be the ghost? If these stories have made you think about the power of the words we use online, prove that you will not be silenced by subscribing to Whispered Fear, leaving a like, and sharing this video. Your support helps us create a community that listens. But what if the mob isn't a group of anonymous strangers? What if the mob is the powerful, faceless corporation you work for? Click the video on your screen now as we explore the terrifying price of telling the truth. 3. True scary stories of whistleblowing and silent retaliation. See you there, if you're not afraid of what you'll find.